Today I'm going to be talking about the topic of fear and how it is taught to the scapegoat by their narcissistic family system. The narcissistic family system will create fear within you, and they do this in many different ways. They will do this through the blame and the constant criticism that you have to endure. The scapegoats, as scapegoats, we carry the burden of the narcissistic parent's emotional dysregulation on our shoulders. Everybody always looks to us, when they go off. And so, when you're raised in this type of environment and you're a child and a teenager, right? You grew up in this type of environment, there's no security. There's no emotional safety. You grew up without emotional safety. And so this will create a sense of fear, like you're not safe. You're not safe in your own home. So where are you safe, really? You're not taught that you are safe in your own environment that is supposed to be safe as your brain is developing and you're discovering life. So this lack of, emotional safety as you endure the blame and the criticism constantly will have a huge effect on you in adulthood. Then there's the gaslighting. Of course, gaslighting. Gaslighting, what it does is that it creates fear of yourself. You become afraid of trusting yourself. You become afraid of yourself. You're taught that you can't rely on yourself. And so making decisions purely based on how you feel within is terrifying, is absolutely terrifying. Through gaslighting, you're taught that you can't trust your emotions, you can't trust your experiences, you can't trust your memories, right? Because everything that happens in that household, never happens as you remember it, right? They will always tell you that you remembered it wrong, that there's something wrong with your memory. That's not how it happened. That's not how it happened. They will tell you, and you grow up like this, constantly doubting yourself. And so eventually you will start feeling yourself, trusting yourself. And of course there's the emotional and psychological and physical abuse that I think this is the norm for scapegoats. Not much I can tell you about that other than, the verbal insults, the neglect, the humiliation, the acts of violence that the narcissistic parent will constantly put us through. Again, it's a constant threat. We're feeling constantly threatened in our own home. Another thing that will cause fear is isolation and rejection, because your narcissistic family system, they blame you, they criticize you, and they treat you like you're the odd one out, like you're the one who can't get in sync with the plan that the family had for you. And, they will cultivate a fear of making mistakes, because in your narcissistic family system, your mistakes are a reason for rejection, for humiliation, for talking down to you, your mistakes are amplified to a point where you making a mistake, you know what's coming. And you become very isolated, alienated by your own family. Another thing that the narcissistic family system will do is that they will cultivate dependency, and they will teach you to fear the unknown. They will tell you that you're not smart enough to handle life. They will tell you, you don't have to move out even though you're ready, and you're way more than ready to move out as an adult, No, you stay home where it's safe, because out there is scary. You can't handle things by yourself. I'm going to hold on to your important documents because you can't handle those, You're going to lose them. You can't handle living on your own. You can't handle life without them. They will teach you that. They will teach you that you can't handle life without their guidance, without them being constantly present in your life. And of course, this guidance is misguided, because in healthy families, children are taught how to be independent and how to do things on their own so that they can, navigate life. But this is not the case in narcissistic family system. We are taught to fear the unknown. We are taught to fear. We are taught to fear the world, And then, of course, the betrayal as well. The betrayal is a common experience, right? How many of you has had siblings that turned on them, or the good parent, right? That when you finally put your foot down and you said, I can't do this, they turn their backs on you, I mean, instead of continuing to have a relationship with you, addressing the problem, not treating your post-traumatic stress disorder, your CPTSD as tantrums that you're creating in your head, right? More gaslighting. I mean, this is betrayal, guys. This is betrayal. And this will, create fear within us to trust other people, because after you go through such deep pain of being betrayed by your own family, your own family will betray you. How can you trust other people out there, right? So we carry a lot of fear in our hearts when we come out of these types of systems. Now, what I want to tell you is that, first of all, in order to deal with your fears, you got to understand that there's two types of fears. There's healthy fear and there's unhealthy fear, okay? Healthy fear is like you're walking through the desert and you see a poisonous snake. It's good to have fear. It's good to have fear because a poisonous snake can kill you, or you're walking near the edge of a cliff and you feel that it's so steep that if you fall down, you will die. So you naturally stay away from the cliff out of fear, right? Those are helpful, useful fears that all of us feel, and we're all supposed to feel. But then there's the unhealthy fear, and those are created by our memories, by our triggers, by our experiences. We create stories within our minds that, we are going to get hurt. An unhealthy fear is quite disproportionate to the actual threat, and we will often create imagined scenarios within our minds because we are so afraid of everything that we've been taught. We are so afraid of getting hurt, that we have avoidance behaviors, we have anxiety, we worry, and this type of unhealthy fear really interferes with our lives, We will fear rejection, right? Being rejected, being abandoned by others, so that will cause a lot of interference in our social interactions. The fear of trusting others, like I said, when you're betrayed by your own family, it's very difficult to be able to trust other people. Fear of failure, because your mistakes made you a demon. So naturally, when you make a mistake, treading into going into the unknown, trying something new, challenging yourself, all these things become terrifying to do because of this fear of failure and the fear of making mistakes, There's fear of confrontation. This is also very difficult to do because, of course, in our household, there was no such thing as healthy family discussions, that actually solve problems or any sort of empathy towards our emotional health. It was always the narcissistic parents' emotional health that mattered. It was never ours. And so confronting somebody can really become terrifying, because when we did that in our own home, it was, it was hell. We endured hell for having confrontations day after day with the narcissistic parent, And there we can develop fear of intimacy as well, It's very hard to get close to people and to open up and be vulnerable. This is because our vulnerabilities were used against us, over and over again, especially by the narcissistic parent. If you had a narcissistic mother, oh my God, well, or father, of course. I don't want to discount that. But my experience was with a narcissistic mother, and I learned very early on that I could not tell her anything about myself. Because as soon as I would displease her, she would use all those vulnerabilities, all those weaknesses, all that stuff that like I would confide in her, that I would share as her daughter. She would use that against me so quickly, to prove to me that I was, to hurt, right? To hurt, so that she could control me. So, fear of asserting yourself, that's very difficult to do, learning to assert yourself after you come out of a narcissistic family system, because asserting yourself also means that somebody might not like you. And when you're taught that everything depends on people liking you, when you're taught that your job is to please other people and never please yourself, it becomes very difficult to become assertive and to be able to handle people not liking you, if that would be the case, right? Fear of repeating patterns. That's something that I've heard a lot of survivors, a lot of women I've heard say, I'm not going to have kids because I'm too afraid that I'll be like my own mother, right? Fear of repeating patterns. Fear that you're going to become like the narcissistic parent. Fear of disappointing people. Oh my God, fear of disappointing people. That was me. It's so hard. It was so hard for me to like say no to someone, for me to assert myself, for me to, put a boundary down, because I was absolutely incapable of disappointing people. Now there's things that you can do, to address the fear, but I want to tell you something, if you become mindful of your fears, you become aware of what it is that you're fearing, and if you actually make that huge, impossible effort to get past them, and to get past that wall, those blocks that are those fears that act as doors. They're like it's like a door that's blocking you from getting to the other side. If you can gather up the courage to open that door and to step on the other side there's peace. Even if you make mistakes, and even if things don't work out exactly as you planned, every time that you make a choice that will empower you, instead of making a choice to go back to the way you've always lived your life, every time you make that choice, to be brave and to empower yourself, that will bring you closer and closer and closer to peace. So one thing that I find is really helpful when dealing with fear is, look, get curious. Turn your fear into curiosity instead. You can actually get curious. You can actually do a switch in your mind. When you're afraid of something, you can say, I wonder what will happen if I actually go through with this. And you have to train yourself to cultivate this curiosity. Fear will often arise from uncertainty, right? When you leave the familiar. But, when you get curious, you become eager to explore something new. You become eager to have new experiences for growth and discovery. So if you foster curiosity, you can actually reduce the anxiety and approach your fears with more like a sense of wonder, So, and remember, everybody always starts off as a fool. Everybody always starts off as a fool. Nobody starts off knowing everything, and mistakes are normal. You gotta expect that you will make mistakes as you begin navigating the unknown. But everybody starts off as a fool. And like I said, when you get curious about what lies on the other side of that door, and you start to open it, it gets easier and easier and easier. The second thing is, I want to tell you too, that you have to learn that it's okay to lean on yourself, to rely on yourself. You actually have to get stubborn about that. I know it's really, really hard when you're alone to do this. I've experienced this, But I decided that I was going to get really stubborn with leaning on myself and on relying on my feelings to make my decisions. This is internal. This is like an internal shift that you have to make for yourself. You have to really inquire within as to what it is that you actually want to do, and learn to rely on yourself to do those things, Start to cultivate activities and interests that are just for you. Just for you. For example, like a hobby, gaining knowledge, taking classes, doing a workout routine, and hiking, like me. Like you can come hiking. Hiking is really fun. It's very therapeutic. Walking, but by cultivating this sort of independence and nurturing your own passions, you build a foundation for self-reliance, and you start to build that inner strength. Getting comfortable with your own company, it allows you to thrive and flourish. And it teaches you to have courage. You actually learn, oh my gosh, I can actually do these things on my own. I can actually do this. So yeah, you have to learn to lean on yourself. You have to learn that you have to shift that internal fear of trusting yourself, and kind of become absolutely stubborn with yourself and tell yourself, you know what, this is how I feel, this is what I'm gonna do. Learn to rely on yourself. This is really, really important. Another thing that I can tell you is, if you actually ask yourself what's the worst thing that can happen and write it down, and then have a strategy, prepare a strategy to tackle it. Like for example, if you're afraid to apply for a job because you're afraid of being rejected, if you actually write down what your fear is, like the fear of rejection, for example, if you apply for that job, well, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is they say no and you try again, right? Writing these things down on paper and preparing a strategy to how you can handle it. If you want to ask a girl out, or boy, and you're afraid of rejection, what's the worst that's going to happen? Well, they're going to say no. That's it. That doesn't define your self-worth. It's just you move on, and then this wasn't the right person for you, and you can move on. You can move on with your life and continue exploring until you find the right person for you. You know what I'm saying? Ask yourself what's the worst that can happen, and write it down. Write it down for yourself, so that you can actually start defining what your fears really are. Like what are you really scared of? Like really try and get to know what those fears really are, so that you can tackle them and pick them off one by one. Another thing that you can do on top of that is learn to say, instead of saying yes to anything, because you're fearful of disappointing someone, you're fearful of what will happen if you say no, or even if you have a compulsion to say yes because you've been taught that it is your job to take care of everybody else's emotions and never your own, right? So if somebody asks a favor, somebody wants something out of you, and you say yes, and then you regret it later on, and then there's the problem of how are you going to tell them that you don't want to do it anymore. In my case, I used to run away all the time. I would take on things, I would say yes because I felt obligated to say yes, and then I would be so afraid of their reaction once I would tell them that I couldn't actually do the thing that I said yes to, so I would run away. I would avoid completely the situation, which was not very healthy. So instead of saying yes, even though you feel this drive to say yes, say, I'll think about it. I'll think about it. And then that will give you time to formulate how you're going to say no. Or maybe the answer is yes, but make sure that your yes is not like a compulsion, and it's not a fear-based one, like a fear that if you don't say yes to this, if you say yes to this person, maybe they will leave you, they will stop being friends with you, maybe they won't like you anymore, right? So really think about this. Think about this before you give anybody an answer. Somebody asks you to do something, say, I'll think about it, and give yourself some time to really think about it before you answer. Never give anybody like a yes right away, especially if you come out of a narcissistic family system, because you might have been trained to do that, to constantly say yes, to avoid what would happen if you say no, right? So don't say yes right away. Say, I'll think about it. I'll think about it. And finally, the last thing that I want to tell you is you have to learn to become the observer of your emotions. Fear is an emotion. It's super uncomfortable. But it's so important for you to learn to observe your emotions as they come and go through you, because you are not fear itself. Just like you are not shame itself, you're not anger itself. Your emotions come and go through you, they're not permanent. And you can actually, observe them as they manifest within your body. Your feelings and your emotions, well, your emotions are messages from your body, right? Your body is just telling you, okay, is this dangerous? Is this not dangerous? You know, this is not good for me. This is good for me. Um, you know, this feels good. This doesn't feel good. Your emotions, they do this, so, but they are not who you are. Okay, like I will always tell you this. It's so important for you to practice mindfulness and to separate yourself, you know, and to observe your emotions instead of becoming completely overcome by them. So learn to become the observer of your fear. Name it. When you feel fear, say it. I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll be rejected. I'm scared of doing this, of making this move because, because it will change my life in some way. I'm afraid. Name what you feel and observe yourself feeling it, because then you still have the power to decide what move you're going to make despite the fear that you feel. Remember that the greatest heroes, to be a hero, to be brave, is to do something whilst feeling fear. If you don't feel fear and you do something, that's not bravery, that's just you doing something. Bravery is really like you feel the fear and you do it anyways. That's what bravery really is, okay? And that's what heroes are made of. And I know that you can do this. You can do this. It's not easy. It's not easy. I never said it was easy. But you can do this. You can teach yourself to slowly push past those fears and, open those doors that are acting as blockers all around you, so that you can bring yourself to living the life that you want to live freely. Be free. Make your goal the goal of being free and peaceful. And the best way to achieve that is truly to learn to push past those fears. And as you do this, their grip will lose hold on you. And whatever it is that you start doing will become your new normal. Okay? So I hope that this was helpful for you. And always remember, repeat to yourself, I love myself, I trust myself. Make that your mantra. You can do this. You can do this. Take care.